Welcome to everyone to the annual Environmental Forum. Myself and Fred Thiele, I believe, is that right, Fred? Have been together for...
I don't even know what he's going to say yet, but it's absolutely right.
we have been the two mainstays here, and we have been, the list has grown. Usually the first thing that we do before everyone gets going is I allow Peter Scully, as our regional director, to kind of make state of the state on the environment from the state's perspective.
Two things to bring to your attention. One, not so happy. I was advised today that Grace Vandervoort, the former president of Conservationists United for Long Island, passed away, and
oh my goodness.
she was a real solid rock in the civic and environmental community. It's sad news that I need to bring to you.
Yeah.
The other news that is a little bit cheerier is that in a couple weeks we'll have closed on the Gene's Four Seasons parcel. I want to thank you for your patience. I know that your good working relationship with Governor Cuomo and your contacting Commissioner Martens really made that happen. So thanks for that. We're on the cusp of getting that done. 99 acres in the core.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting year for us. I think that the new administration, as you know, has been intent on making our state government more efficient and operating in more coordinated fashion. We've been supporting the efforts of the Long Island Economic Development Council and trying to make sure that we're in a position, even with the resource constraints that we have, to support efforts to redevelop areas of Long Island. And I think we've been doing a good job. For those of you who are interested in what we see in terms of the economy, I can tell you that DEC typically sees upticks in permitting activity before the economy begins to recover fully, and we have seen an increase in permitting activity since 2009 of 24%. So the indications are that we're going to see more of that. We've been very involved in a series of issues, a lot of media attention on some of those. I always look back at the notes from the year before and see where we are in some of these issues. And I see last year we were talking about sea level rise, and we were talking about the Carmans River. We've had some progress on the Carmans River, perhaps not as much as some of us would like, and probably hear from some of the non-governmental representatives today about that process. Notwithstanding the efforts of Supervisor Lesko and his leadership, that process is bogged down on the Carmans River plan. The good news, I think, is that the efforts of a committee established by the town to look at upper and lower lakes is advancing a plan to deal with problems associated with invasive species there and general degradation of conditions. Maybe we'll hear more about that today. We see a continuation of progress there. DEC has been working on a series of issues that are getting attention as well. We have underway an investigation into some groundwater contamination in cooperation with our friends at Suffolk County Department of Health Services and New York State Department of Health. We had indications of some contamination with heavy metals, manganese, and low levels of radioactivity, which were a surprise to us, and we continue to try and unravel that mystery. And there's a great level of public interest in that. And there's also some public interest in ongoing efforts to finalize amendments, modifications of our solid waste regulations. The current version of those regulations constrains somewhat DEC's ability to manage waste streams, which are niche waste streams of organic waste, land clearing, debris, and the like. And that process is advancing within DEC, and we'll probably be hearing more about that later this year. Last year, we did speak briefly about the four-poster tick-aside technology, and I know Dale spoke about the work that Cornell did on the study, and at that time indicated he was hopeful DEC would get around to acting on a registration allowing the use of that product in New York. I'm pleased to advise you that on January 9th, DEC did issue a special local needs registration allowing the use of that product in Nassau and Suffolk counties only, and the department is now in the process of establishing regulations or a process by which folks can obtain the necessary permits to feed deer, which is prohibited pursuant to our regulations, but we're working through that. Finally, there has been continued progress on the effort to plan for a cleanup and management of the Forge River. Maybe some folks will talk about that later today. And putting on my Pine Barrens Commission hat, and we'll probably hear more from John a little bit later, I can tell you that we had a fairly productive year. I think that we did a good job balancing the need to promote appropriate economic development with the need to protect the environment. The Commission voted to authorize redevelopment projects at Artist Lake Plaza, which is a significant redevelopment project, and the Suffolk Meadows project. We are having a little bit of difficulty moving ahead with amendments to the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. Hopefully we'll see those move forward this year. We have been working with local governments on concerns about dredging. You know that we have a series of dredging windows that are in place to protect shellfish and finfish, piping plovers, and winter flounder, and those three windows combined make it difficult sometimes for municipalities to advance dredging projects, and we've been working with them on a case-by-case basis and dealing with requests for relief as they come up.
I want to announce something that the governor has an opportunity to, after he presents his budget, to make amendments 21 days after and then 30 days after. And this week, the governor made an important amendment to his budget by naming the Advanced Energy Center at Stony Brook as a center of excellence, which means Stony Brook now has 2 centers of excellence. So that's a very important thing for those of you who are into the energy area. Yakov Shamash, as he announced, is the co-chairman of the Advanced Energy Center and vice president for economic development and the dean of engineering. So that really is great news to have that. And Stony Brook will be working with Brookhaven National Lab on some important economic issues, and maybe Yakov, at some point you can talk about those, or Mike. You know, the grid, smart grid. Someday I'll get my hands around the smart grid. So, no. Carmen's River, we've made some movement there, and I spoke with the supervisor today. He was with his planning director, who is here, back here. Okay, and that's moving on a positive track, and I think 2 other things that I want to raise. Just people want to talk about it. There are lots of dredging issues, and I always seem as a legislator to be running with everyone else to try and get into a dredge cycle, and we know certain creeks every year, like the Plover, comes that boats can't get in and out of certain areas. So I'd like to talk about that and some sort of managed maintenance plan so that we don't always have to be working against the clock. And at some point, Regional Director, if you can talk about compost facilities and where we are. You kind of generically mentioned that. That's of great interest to some of us.
Thanks to all of you for being here again this afternoon. This is always a great forum, and we get a great exchange of ideas, and I'm glad to again be participating in it. I'm going to talk about a local issue, but certainly always when we have this meeting, it's right after the governor has put out his budget. And you know, the biggest issue we've always dealt with in the budget the last few years has been the Environmental Protection Fund. And this year, while we are still on an extremely tight statewide budget, at least there are no cuts. The Environmental Protection Fund would be funded at the same level as last year. So you know, we certainly need to focus on some of the priorities within the Environmental Protection Fund, the need to make sure that state, county, and local governments continue to be partners, particularly with regard to land preservation. But at least the starting point for the Environmental Protection Fund is better this year than it's been as we've dealt the last couple of years. The Senator wanted me to briefly update everybody with regard to the Peconic Institute, and this is really the Senator's and my joint effort really to bring life back to Southampton College. And we have a number of initiatives that are being worked on with regard to the college. We're hopeful to see, number one, with the Marine Sciences Laboratory, that we will see the groundbreaking there for the new Marine Sciences facility at the college. Second, certainly, is the expansion of the arts program at the college. Third, are discussions that are ongoing with regard to Southampton Hospital at that college. And fourth, really kind of an outgrowth of the students that were there for the sustainability program, is the creation of the Peconic Institute, which, for lack of a better term, I think would be a think tank for the 5 East End towns to provide research and resources for the East End in dealing with a number of the problems that we've dealt with through the years, whether they be land preservation or water quality protection or energy or transportation, those kinds of issues. And we had a big kickoff meeting at the end of November. Over 180 people showed to that meeting. Over 50 local organizations were represented, including just about everybody in this room. And since that day, we have followed up with work groups to look at issues such as how it should be organized, what the mission should be, and obviously, with the case with any organization, is how it should be financed. And again, this is another example of a public-private partnership, but something that's going to rely heavily on private involvement. Those work groups have met since that initial meeting. The steering committee that we set up will be meeting in early March, and we're hopeful that sometime in the next, I would say, 45 to 60 days, what that will yield will be the initial, the creation of the Institute through the filing for a not-for-profit corporation, and then we will go forward from there. And a lot of that work still needs to be done as far as the mission statement. I want to thank a lot of the work group chairs, such as Kevin McDonald, who I see here today, and all of those that have worked on this. And we think this can be something that's important, not just for the environment of the East End, but also important for the economy of the East End. This institute has I think the ability to also be a voice for the 5 East End towns when we're dealing with things like the Long Island Regional Economic Council and how state funding should be apportioned on Long Island and on the East End. So we've made a lot of progress with this, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks to a couple of months, the Institute will take its first baby steps, and that will be with its incorporation.
Okay, open it up to who's going to be the first.
Senator?
Never shy. Wait, let's see, who are the first two people?
Stamper.
We're all respectful of one another's environmental priorities, no more than we are at this forum. But I think there is an environmental challenge that's in front of us that is second to none, and that will involve everybody, regardless of their involvement in the environment or any other aspect of life on Long Island, and that is the declining water quality, both drinking and surface water quality, reported by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services this past year. This is going to require a significant new look in the way we go about addressing this problem. We're going to need to have some real management control. No one is really in charge of both of these things. We're doing things in every level that we can't afford to continue to do without really compromising our greatest natural resources. It's as important to our economy as it is to our environment. We're turning to our state officials, and we're going to ask them to look at what makes sense, not just statewide, but for the nation's first sole source aquifer. Excuse me, we have problems that are unique to our water quality here that just don't exist in any other part of the state. We may have need legislation that just affects Long Island, much as we did with the Pine Barrens Act. We're going to need more county regulation. The county is moving quickly to have the health department expedite the permit process at the health department. Simultaneously, we need to advance better environmental protection, better protection of drinking water, sewage treatment, all of the things that that department is responsible for. It's not either or. If we can make it work better, we're going to make it work better both for the economy and for the environment. It's not one or the other. It's both, and it needs to happen. The towns will be involved. They make land use decisions. Many of them are already looking at how we're going to deal with the 70% of Long Island that isn't sewered and how we're going to deal with cesspools and that kind of solid waste problem. The development community already talking to us about how we need to do things differently. Are the new technologies going to be put in place in ways that resolve these problems that have been created by overdevelopment and by not having an adequate septic system, a wastewater control system? The folks in agriculture are going to be looking at what they're using and how they can use it and how they can use the better stuff and not the worst stuff. This is something that is actually going to go into every one of our homes, and that is the prescription drugs and the personal care products and the stuff we put on our lawns and our plants. This is a movement that will involve everybody on Long Island, and if we don't do it, we're all going to perish. So, and I don't mean that, and I mean that in every sense of the word. There is no civilized, functional region in this country that can function without a pure water supply. I think we all know it. I think when you've got a reservoir north of the city, you're not likely to tether 1,000 houseboats on the Croton Reservoir because you can see it. With our sole source aquifer, out of sight is frequently out of mind. We can't afford that to continue. So we're all going to work together with you in the state legislature, with those folks in the county legislature, with those people in the towns, and a lot of us have already set to work, and we'll be talking literally in the next 3 months about a whole series of agendas that we have to advance at every level, and I just hope that everybody will make that a priority. Nothing specific tonight, but it is right around the corner. It's this session of the legislature. It's this, the functions in this year's Suffolk County legislature, the town supervisors and the town boards, all across this town, all 10 Suffolk County towns will have a role to play, and so will every person who calls Long Island their home. We'll work with you. We want you to work with us.
First thing is that we're asking Senate and Assembly members to support the bill called Sewage Pollution Right to Know. Simple bill, no cost, very effective. It's Senate Bill 6268. It simply requires public notification when there is a partially or untreated sewage discharge from STPs. We don't have that right now. It's the public to know when sewage goes into the Long Island Sound, the Peconic Estuary, the South Shore Estuary, rivers, streams, tributaries, or wherever. We know we have sewage flows, overflows, because they're documented, but the public doesn't know. And we have videos of people who send them to us of people swimming in it and fishing in it, in the plumes and whatnot. The public has a right to know. The bill mandates that. We would kindly ask you to please support it. There'll be an assembly version introduced shortly by Assemblyman Sweeney, and the bill is being carried by Senator Grasante from Buffalo. The second thing is, speaking of groundwater, one of the things our organization is doing, along with 25 other organizations across Long Island, is calling for the DEC to ban the top 3 most detected pesticides in our drinking water supply. Atrazine has been found 127 times. Imidacloprid has been found 890 times. And the granddaddy of them all, metaaxyl, has been found 1,327 times. We should not be drinking pesticides in our groundwater. The DEC, gratefully, has put forth a Long Island pesticide use management plan. It has been they've been working on it since 1998. We would ask the Senate and Assembly members to bring the baby home this year. Okay, we can get it done in 2012. It's a very good draft plan. It's almost ready to be released to the public. Many of us served on the TAC that have seen it before. So we need to get the plan done. We need to have better protections and stronger protections from pesticides entering into groundwater supply. But you're here because you want to know what you can do that's new, right? I have 2 great ideas for you. The first one is that the state can, and we want to work with you on this, the state can craft a bill that requires medical establishments, hospitals, long-term care facilities, hospices, to have safe disposal plans for unwanted and unused pharmaceutical drugs. We've checked The state has really no regulations on this. The protocol is to stop flushing them. But what's happening is these facilities are still doing that. When we worked in Suffolk County to pass such a law, we got calls from all over. It was actually pretty scary, to be honest. Nurses, healthcare workers were calling and saying, we didn't know you weren't supposed to flush them. Are you sure you're not supposed to flush them? We said, yes, we're sure. They had no idea. They were telling us, they were told by their management, at these are facilities all over Nassau and Suffolk, they were supposed to go in when a patient expired, grab the drugs, and flush them because they didn't want them circulating around the facility. I understand that, but it ends up in drinking water and coastal water. We can do better. Some of this is just education. Many of these facilities would hire, the company to come and bring them into the incinerator if they knew they were supposed to do that. That's something we can do together. It would be meaningful, and it also would be no cost to the state. But we need to do better on that. Last and certainly not least, I'm going to take up the issue of compost. I'd have to publicly thank Assemblyman Murray for all the work he's done with our organization and the Brookhaven Community Coalition on this very important issue. But, everybody likes composting, right? It's a good thing. We need to compost. It's a very important part of recycling, reuse. But gone are the days when composting should be done in open air and be allowed to contaminate drinking water, cause dust and odors that wreak havoc in community and degrade the community's health. We have to be done with those days. We can't make excuses for this type of business activity because we like that business. So we now know we have drinking water, we have groundwater contamination, and in some cases it was in private wells. State Health Department has minimized that. It's very angry. They have acted like it's no big deal unless you're that homeowner drinking 38,000 parts per billion of manganese when the drinking water standard is 400. Or 45, picocuries per liter of alpha radiation when the drinking water standard is 15. That's pretty serious. We know it's coming from compost facilities. The Halab facility, which is in Yaphank along Main Street, 49,000 parts per billion of manganese, the highest level ever recorded in Long Island groundwater, highest ever. We know it came from Long Island compost, south of the compost. We know it's in Mauritius where Long Island compost was. We know. So now we need to act. So what will we do? So rules and regulations have to be set forth that they're on impermeable surfaces. They can no longer contaminate drinking water. They have to be enclosed. We can't have dust storms and odors that cause people to literally flee their homes and get their kids checked every month for respiratory ailments. We can no longer do that. We need your help, and we're asking for it. Thank you.
Peter, do you want to address some of the things that Dick talked about and Adrian talked about?
First, I guess we've been, as I mentioned earlier, investigating groundwater contamination in the vicinity of Horse Block Road, south of the Great Gardens facility and north of the Brookhaven landfill, and trying to determine whether or not the contamination that we're seeing is a result of activities which are unique to facilities in that area or not so much unique to those facilities, but the activities that are carried out there. Mm-hmm. And so we've been working with the cooperation of the Suffolk County Department of Health and New York State Department of Health to kind of broaden our data finds. And the work isn't done yet. It's continuing, but preliminarily at least, it seems to show that the elevated levels of manganese are related to operations which manage vegetative waste. And as Adrian indicates, in an effort to protect groundwater, it may well be necessary for us to change the way we regulate those activities to ensure that they're carried out on impermeable surfaces to protect groundwater. There is a Brookhaven Community Coalition, which Adrian mentioned, which had initially focused its attention on the town of Brookhaven landfill and the acceptance of biosolids from the city of New York, which has kind of expanded its focus to include composting activities. So I think that it's an issue that's going to be developing in 2012. It is timely because DEC has been working on an update of its Part 360 solid waste regulations, and so if there is a need to consider the results of the investigation in the regulations that we advance, we could incorporate those in that modification. And that process is still ongoing internally at DEC. I can't tell you when those regulations will be released for public review. I know that Senator Selden and Assemblyman Murray had asked us to, move on that as quickly as possible. And as soon as that timetable becomes clear, we'll be sharing that information with you. With regard to the pesticide issues that Adrian had mentioned, DEC has been advancing a Long Island pesticide use management plan or strategy, and the history of it is a long history. The department had begun moving in that direction, as Adrian indicates, in the late 1990s. In 2000, the CCMP for the Peconic Estuary was completed, and it included a priority management recommendation for a Long Island pesticide use management plan. So we've made some progress over the past 2 years. We created a technical advisory committee that includes representatives of most of the agencies, the government agencies, people from the educational institutions, Stony Brook and Cornell, and the Sustainability Institute at Malloy, and Neil's here, and including the agricultural community and business community, because it's important that we make sure that we have the ability to sustain agriculture on Long Island. We have a tremendous investment in farmland, and it's an important part of our economy.
First, I'd like to thank you, Assemblyman Thiele and Jay Schneiderman, for your ongoing support of the educational programs offered by the Montauk Observatory, which are open to the public and free. We hope to continue our lecture series and star parties. They're held throughout the towns on the East End, and we hope that this will be the year that we finally build the observatory to house our professional-grade telescope, which was purchased by our members. I welcome all to join. Membership is free. Second, even though we have been so far unsuccessful to enact the statewide legislation, dark sky legislation, we have been successful throughout your district. Maybe this year we can see legislation for New York State, and I'd appreciate your advice about what we can do, similar to that which has been enacted in Connecticut. In the meantime, in case you or your fellow legislators see projects crossing your desks that seek your approval or state funding, which involve outdoor lighting, I've prepared guidelines for good outdoor lighting plans, which could be attached to the specifications to assure proper light levels for safety, and which would prevent glare, light trespass, sky glow, and use energy more wisely. And anyone who's driving back to the East End on Route 111 in the town of Brookhaven, they followed good lighting plans for the fire station that is at the blinking yellow light. So as you pass by, you'll see how well the light is contained to the site. It's just very well lit. So I'll pass out guidelines to everybody. Thanks.
I wanted to touch on the composting issue, and as Adrian had said, in the beginning of her comment period there, that it is important. I mean, composting is important, and when we talk about the composting facilities, no one wants to put them under or put people out of work or discontinue composting. But with that said, we have to work together to make sure that these composting facilities are good neighbors and that they aren't harming the groundwater and aren't harming the environment. So with that said, I would just like to say that thank you to Adrian and your colleagues and the citizens from the area that have met with us numerous times, and thank you to Pete also, who's been great working together on this. I think we have made a lot of progress in the past year, and I'm looking forward to a lot more progress in the coming year. I think everybody is recognizing what needs to be done. Now it's just getting, we're hopeful that everyone will do this on a voluntary basis, but if not, then maybe we need to take the steps further. But I think we are making great progress, and I appreciate working together with all of you.
One is that we're continuing to be concerned about declining shorebird populations. That's due at least in part to overharvesting of horseshoe crabs, whose eggs the birds depend on when they migrate. They stop here on Long Island as they migrate from South America. So we're asking for continued strict quotas on horseshoe crab harvesting, and possibly more importantly, strict enforcement by the DEC of the quotas. Secondly is we are concerned about land preservation, specifically the grasslands at EPCAL. We think it's important to preserve, if not the entire property, but at least part of the grasslands at EPCAL. It's home to dozens of species of birds and other animals, and it's one of the last natural grassland habitats on Long Island. So we just asked the state to support preserving these grasslands and be a partner in funding that preservation. So, thank you.
I'm going to handle one of those issues, and then I'm going to let Supervisor Walter handle the second. Out of this environmental forum, 2 years ago. Two issues came up in terms of preservation. One was the horseshoe crab. We have that legislation in. Assemblyman Engelbright has it in the Assembly. The second one was preservation of the seahorse. I forget the scientific name. We passed that bill, and that is law. Governor signed that. So out of this forum came those two. We got one through. I've made a note to redouble our efforts on the horseshoe crab. Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up.
What we've done with EPCAL is we've undertaken a almost $500,000 study. We're doing the environmental impact statement. We've done we're working on a subdivision. We've done the update to the market analysis, and we're using VHB and Terry Elkowitz, and what we've come up with is, we're not preserving all the grasslands, but what we've come up with is, if you look at this, this is the short runway on this side, which there is the bulk of the grasslands, but this part of the runway here is the least impacted from things like wetlands, tiger salamanders, and we felt it was very important that we needed to keep everything contiguous. In other words, even the Pine Barrens Commission would understand that every one of these lots has to be 35% preserved, but it doesn't make sense to keep preserving 35% here and there and everywhere and not having contiguous block. So what we've done is we're talking about preserving all of this property right up through here. This is the business incubator here. And what we're looking to do, and whether we get this accomplished or not, I'm not sure. We're looking for a partner in this. The town potentially will be looking to deed this property or put a long-term lease on this property, not for money, to a conservation group. Personally, I'd love to see something like Stony Brook or ESF up at Syracuse take possession of the property. And there is grasslands in here. We understand that there'll be a need to probably recreate more grasslands, but the reason that this was selected is there's more wetland impacted properties over here than there were over here. And when this is all said and done, this is about 1,100 acres. We'll be probably constructing on, he laughs, we will be constructing on probably less than 1,000 acres. I don't know what the numbers here, it's in flux a little bit while we're doing the studies, but this is less than 1,000 acres. And this is probably the town board's preferred alternative, which is a sort of a mixed-use industrial. I think the board has the jury's out as to whether we allow any residential here, but it's on here, and we're going to study those uses. And we're working with the Senate and the Assembly for special state legislation on EPCAL to be continued. Maybe next year we'll know more about that. The second alternative, because you have to study alternatives in your environmental impact statement, is more, we have it labeled as polo or equestrian, but it is more of a recreational zoning. You've got a mixed use up here, You do have some polo equestrian residential here. And again, the same percentage of property would be preserved. This is alternative B, because we put polo here because there is a proposal to do polo here, so we're not going to kick that to the curb. But we've been working with the DEC. We've met with Terry Elkowitz has probably met with representatives of every one of these environmental groups here. And then the final thing that I will say is this is all sewered, or it will be sewered. And the town board hasn't seen it, but I've seen there's going to be a subdivision in here, and we'll probably bring that to the town board. They're not done with it, to subdivide this property. And what the goal is to go to the Regional Economic Development Council, Long Island Regional Economic Development Council, and ask for the funding for the map and plan, which we expect is going to be $1 million. The state of New York has to be Riverhead's partner in this. A town of 35,000 people with a $42 million budget cannot redevelop this property in an environmentally sensitive or an economically sensitive manner. So we are working with the state.